Okay, so excellent presentations. Thank you so much. And I'm going to try to provide maybe a little framework that allows us for further discussion. Because these are quite different and varied, and we have a lot of different and varied backgrounds in the room, and that's spectacular, and that was the idea. And actually, just our conversations about this has evolved. Doug and I, as I said, went back a long way back to Iowa, in which he used to measure, and has for many, many years, made his living measuring sympathetic nerve activity in humans. And I've made my living for many, many years measuring sympathetic nerve activity in animals. And so when I first learned about the Hispanic, I'm just trying to tie this up real quick, about the Hispanic paradox, I was in a meeting in Arizona, and I just got quite interested in this cardiovascular hypertension side, and the sympathetic nervous system plays a key role in that. So I just thought, oh, it's quite fascinating. I went back and did some literature searches and found there's been not a single study has measured sympathetic nerve activity, direct measurement of sympathetic nerve activity in the Hispanic population. They've been measured in Caucasians, and they've been measured in African Americans and Pacific Islanders, and go down. Not a single Hispanic study. This is where I thought about, I wonder if this is part of this Hispanic paradox, the sympathetic nervous system might play a role. That's when Doug and I started talking. And so we started this kind of little question at that time, but it has evolved now into this idea of maybe we should be tackling something much larger with Hispanic health span. And now trying to do this more across our campus and saying maybe we should attack it in much, much larger and really think about it. That's the idea. So it continues to have this evolution even within ourselves in the last 6 months. And so it's exciting. And so I will just try to provide a framework is all, a real quick framework for you today. This is, and I decided to use this because this is from Doug's because it brings forth. You know, this is Fernando's work, the population factors, these intermediary biological mechanisms, what Doug talked extensively about, the function of disease and health span. This is central nervous system component, the social demographic factors influence this, and the molecules and so forth. Just a nice overview slide that Doug had. Okay, so this integration of molecular markers and physiological profiles has become a kind of a state-of-the-art way to look at different domains of health span in this case, or lifespan, or however. And so we won't spend a lot of time at this, and I'm going to skip a few slides because we have discussed this now, and we should open up for other discussion. But connecting molecular markers to physiological profiles is really a contemporary biomedical strategy, no question. And we know the Hispanic population is the largest and fastest growing minority in the U.S., the fastest growing aging population, healthcare disparities. And yet there's been very little work with respect to how to connect a comprehensive understanding of molecular, biological, physiological, social-demographic indices of health span. And so this we'll try to build a little, so the hypothesis then of this overall, the working hypothesis is that establishing molecular, cellular, and systems biological markers of the Hispanic phenotype is fundamental for informing the health versus disease risk profile in the Hispanic community. Just restated what Doug had said. We believe that establishing these first and helping us inform health and disease will influence health span. And we'll come back to the implications in a minute. So that's just a working hypothesis, that's all. It just provides us a framework to think about. So then how do we think about that? How do we think about it? Well, I think it takes 4 steps we need to think about. And as it turns out, we believe at least, and I think hopefully after this, we all will believe on this campus that we have these 4. First is you, of course, have to have the identified population and the selected cohorts. We have the population. Fernando brings expertise in how to select those specific cohorts, as do other people in the room. Secondly, we need ways to determine the physiological and molecular phenotypes of the Hispanic population. And we'll see in another slide, we have that. We have the health sciences, we have nursing, we have other people in liberal arts, we have the basic biomedical sciences, the BBRC, that can do the omics research. Third, we also have in the in the BBRC, we have the capacity for big data analytics. In order to understand any types of omics, especially if we're going to think about them in deep ways with respect to acculturation and other health disparities, so forth, you have to have big data analytics. We have those on our campus. And fourth is then we have to take this across to everyone involved and begin to generate hypotheses and design experiments. So I see this as a twofold type. The first three are the kind of the first step, and then the last, number four, provides us much, much broader view to start thinking about mechanisms. So, how do we do this? Well, first of all, again, we're not going to go through this because we've done it already. There's no sense in taking time on this, but we clearly have an El Paso Juarez advantage, as has been stated, and we have a UTEP advantage. We have the demographic, we have those advantages. We need to take those competitive and comparative advantages and work them to our benefit. And I think we do a nice job, but I think we can do better. Second, we actually have the capacity on this campus to measure virtually all of the systems physiology phenotypes that I think we need to put together a model that will associate with the molecular biological components. And these are just a few. These are just a few. And we have them right now in these varied places. So just a few, but we actually can measure these. Third, as I just said, we have the capacity to do the biological molecular marker profiling. Through the integrative omics that we have in the BBRC, we can measure genomics and genetics, epigenetics, and proteomics and metabolomics. All of these can be done. Fourth, as I said, step 3 in this case, we have the capacity to do big data analytics. We currently do this type of work. We do this type of work actually in my laboratory individually on a population basis with genomics, but we do this on a population basis through the BBRC. So all these different steps that are involved in big data analytics, the multi-omic profiling, the ontogeny classification, the enrichment and overrepresentation processes, all of these pathway analyses can be done. And we have expertise on both sides of the equation. We have expertise on the mathematical side. We have expertise, which I think is just as important in this case, we have expertise on the community side, the physiological side, the real, what does that data mean, the interpretation side, the contextual side of data. We actually have that. And then it leads to step 4, which is, of course, much more broad, but I think it is as exciting, but is more long-term, and that is these types of analyses will provide us the molecular, cellular, and systems mechanisms. Then that will inform how we proceed. What do we study? Do we want to study advantage or disadvantage of the Hispanic paradox? What are those indicators that may lead to the molecular mechanisms behind an increased health span? What are the social demographic factors that may play a role over here on sociological initiatives and so forth? I mean, this is as wide open as it could be, in my opinion. Because the first 3 steps provide these data background for people to actually look and ask their questions. So, in my opinion, and I hopefully you've all convinced yourselves today and listening, but we are interested in learning much, much more, I think we actually have 4 real unique and strategic advantages. The first is we have thematic initiatives. In any type of move forward, in any type of discipline, you need that capability to see something that other people haven't identified yet, to see it as a way to win. And I said from the first thing we talked about, I think Doug Seals brings that to this team. He brings health span to this team that we hadn't thought about before. Can we bring health span and geroscience in a way that people have not thought about in the Hispanic community? I think this is a selling point. This is novel and is timely. Second, we have, as we've said here numerous times, we have this integrative approach. We have a campus full of people that are talented, that have multiple types of functional domains. This integration is going to be critical. We have to do this together. Third, as Fernando just said, we actually have the capability to isolate multi-cohorts. And these are just a few, and he just mentioned a few, but binational, residential status, migration, acculturation, multi-generational. These are key. And as we sat and ate dinner last night, as much as we, from the biological side, want to think that multi-omics is the way forward, I actually believe more and more that I kind of understand it is really this multi-cohort analysis that is the way forward. It is this overlay of the social demographics that I think will inform the that is influencing, but then we will help inform. I think it's quite striking. And lastly, I think we have the critical research needs. We have the critical mass to do this type of work here. So community partners are going to be vital for us, and collaboration again is vital. And this type of work has very specific deliverables. And Doug actually touched on some of these, but very specific deliverables that are very important as we have an aging population. And we don't have to walk through each of these individually because Doug did a nice job covering them. But they're the same. We communicate to the community. There's health policy. There are predicting future disease and health outcomes. Then you have interventions much sooner than we would have before, and so on and so forth. But there are specific deliverables. So again, this type of work, as you search funding at the NIH for these types of projects, these broad projects, they're asking more and more about milestones and deliverables, especially for this kind of work. And I think we have the framework to deliver on these type of milestones, without a doubt.
So do you
Yes.
use the term deliverables synonymously with the translation piece?
Some of these are translational, exactly.
Because you had, I mean, it was very exciting. You had 1 to 4, and then I listened to, I think it's Greg, if I'm not mistaken.
Craig.
Craig,
Yeah.
sorry. And then I think about the folks in health sciences who were deeply concerned about the clinical applications, community applications, and the translational piece. And the wonderful opportunity to begin to look at 1 to 4 and then build 5 to 8, for example, that encompasses these things so that it's not further experimentation, but more so than very strategic translational.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. So, for instance, predicting future health and disease outcomes is exactly what you're saying. That's an absolute translational step, because that allows, so now we know something about how to intervene, and then the translation component is how do we intervene.
And then how do we evolve our curricula to
How
prepare
do you,
the next generation of
absolutely,
researchers and clinicians
absolutely.
to be more responsive to these?
I agree completely. And so I think this is all in a cycle that that is absolutely in a cycle that we have to feed on each other. And so lastly, I just will end this last slide because I know we've been here a little while. You know, it's a good time to, I think, end. But this is a slide that Maria made for us, and I think it's really, I like this slide a lot because it provides each of those that we talked about, the social demographic, the phenotypes, the impact on health span, the evidence-based. But I think I personally really like the last circle because I don't think there's any reason we shouldn't be establishing El Paso and Juarez and the Borderplex and this community and this talent and these people as the epicenter. If my take on the literature, and we've really tried to work hard on this literature in the last 6 months, and I am behind the curve. I understand this has not been my area, so you can inform us, please. But my take is there's been a lot of piecemeal work done, and I think Fernando will support us on this here and there, and all very good work. This is excellent people, but I don't think we have had the type of experimental cohesiveness, paradigm-changing ability to control that we actually live right here. And I think this needs to be the way we move forward with our next grants and how we piece this together and show the NIH that we actually can do something quite unique here that will be informative to the Mexican American population, which is, of course, the highest percent of Hispanic Americans. So I think we'll end there. And I think then, I can't remember, Maria, I'm sorry. Are we opening up here?